Welcome to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Bio. Join me as we uncover how setbacks, challenges, and failures can become those pivotal moments that lead to purpose-driven, fulfilled lives. Each week, my guests and I will be sharing stories, insights, and tools to help you reclaim your power and show you how life's biggest challenges are happening for us, not to break us, but to redirect us toward the life we deeply desire. Whether you're here for inspiration, mindset shifts, or just to feel more aligned in your journey, you are in the right place. So whether you're catching a break, powering through, or squeezing in some me time, let's dive into the lessons hidden in life's ups and downs. We're here to embrace every unexpected twist, moving toward a life of passion, purpose, and authenticity. These stories, they are proof that you too can make those shifts happen. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Power Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Bio, and in today's solo episode, we are going to talk about your intuition, your inner voice. What is that exactly, and how can you maybe turn it up just a little bit? So I want you to get comfortable and get cozy because we're going to take a little rewind back into a time of my life where I was not necessarily aware that that inner voice was something I needed to listen to. And also, as a funny story, it was something that I was told I needed to turn up a little bit. So I really want this to be an interactive episode for you as my listeners because it is something that might be relatable to you. And through my little funny aha story at about 8 years old, I've stuck with it my entire life, and it's something that has been life-changing for me at the young age of 8. And so I encourage you in this episode to kind of play along with me, role play just a little bit. If you are in a safe, comfortable place where you can close down your eyes, or you can turn on some soft music, or you can kind of just maybe get into it with me in this version of storytelling for me of hearing my inner voice. Maybe alongside that, you can find where this happened to you in your life. So if you are, and we're going to shut down our eyes if you're comfortable, I'm going to keep mine open so that I can talk you through this. But I want you to imagine a time in your life that maybe you started to hear that little voice that is inside of you. And why is that voice inside of us? What is that voice inside of us? And did you listen to that voice or did you not? So, okay, let's dive into this. So I want you to get comfortable. I want you to just relax. You don't have to shut down your eyes. You don't have to imagine my story, but it might help you get into your own story and be able to understand where that little voice came from and maybe when he or she started talking to you. All right, so whatever you're doing, just relax and let's talk about this. So I think I was about 8 years old, and we're going to dive into this and get it's hilarious. So please don't lose me here. This is a very funny story, and if my mom is listening to this, she's already chuckling. And if you've maybe heard my mom say this story, here's a repeat. But my brother and I were both in elementary school, and my mom worked at the elementary school that was just up the street from us. We really weren't far from her, but we got to ride the bus home and get home, start doing our homework and all the things. We didn't have to wait for her to get done at work. So we got off the bus, and both of us were like, okay, let's go home. Let's get our homework done. Well, guess what happened? A couple of neighborhood friends were like, hey, do you guys want to go sledding? Now, mind you, my house was in a cul-de-sac, and then just about 3 houses down is where this house was that we were going to go and sled in their backyard. And so my brother and I both were like, yeah, let's go sledding. Like we're just getting done with school. Homework can wait. Mom will be fine. It's no big deal. So we decided to go. Well, deep down inside, I think both my brother and I were kind of like, well, we probably should call my mom and we should maybe listen to a voice that might have been in us. But at that point we were like, yeah, let's go sledding. So fast forward to us having the time of our life and sledding and just enjoying our friendships and all the things, to mother freaking out. Where in the heck did my kids go? I know I put them on the bus. I know they should be home. What is going on? Where are they? Well, lo and behold, we were right there. So we got found and whatever. And we go in and she sends us both to our rooms. And she's upset, and we can tell. I mean, obviously she didn't know where her kids were, so it's relatable, right? Anybody on here is a mom and you're like, where the heck is my kid? Here's your relatable story around that. And I just want you to kind of dive into that and understand that, hey, it's normal to freak out when you don't know where your kids are. Okay. So she sends us both up. I think my brother got talked to first. He was older, he was wiser, he was supposed to probably keep me in check, even though I was always the one that was like, well, let's just do it. And he's like, no, we need to follow the rules. And I was like, no, let's go see what's over here. So if anybody in the audience is thinking I am like Maggie, welcome. And I love it. So anyway, I was always kind of like the peer pressure, like, hey, let's go do this, let's go try it. So my brother gets talked to, and then my mom comes in my room, and I'm sitting there and I'm pretty upset because I feel like I did upset my mom, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. I don't know really how to apologize much more than that, but like I'm really sorry and I won't do it again. And I'm sorry that you were afraid that you had lost us. And so she says, okay, well, let's talk about something. Now, this is where the story gets good, and this is where we're going to talk about your intuition, your inner voice, that inner thing that just is inside of you that might be that voice that we tend to maybe shut off sometimes, or we maybe discount, or we just don't really know what it's truly trying to say to us. So she said, Mary Agnes, that's a story for another time. That is my legal name. And she said, Mary Agnes. And I perk up anytime I hear Mary Agnes because I know I'm in pretty but deep dog trouble. And I perked up and I said, yes. And she said, I want to ask you a question. And I said, okay, yeah, what is it? And I'm really sorry, Mom. I'm really sorry. And I'm trying to kind of push it away. And she said, do you know that inner voice that I tell you to listen to? And I said, I think so. I kind of think I heard it, What I had already said is at the beginning, I was kind of like, maybe we shouldn't do this and kind of push it away. But then I was like, no, let's have some fun. And she said, you hear it, right? And you know. And I said, well, Mom, I think that mine isn't loud enough. And her being the school teacher at the time and all the things that she does and deals with all these kids, she literally turned her back, and you could tell she was like trying not to laugh out loud and see that it was kind of a funny statement as an 8-year-old to say to her mom, like, I don't think mine's loud enough, and then whatever. So then she turns around, composes herself, and she said, well, Mary Agnes, I want you to turn it up. And I looked at her like this, like, oh my gosh, wide-eyed, thought to myself, like, okay, this is serious. So that was my turning point. That was the shift in my life that I needed to understand that that voice is extremely powerful. That voice inside of you is your higher self and your higher being saying, whoa, don't do that, or hell yes, girl, go for it, or hell yes. Anybody can do that, right? So anybody has that power inside of them, and it's your intuition. It's your little voice that's there to guide you and protect you. Now, sometimes the inner voice can be really loud, and it can also try to protect you from certain things that I think is just unknown and uncertain to the brain. So you have to really, truly sit quiet and listen to that and understand, what is that voice trying to tell you? Is it there to protect you? Is it there to guide you? Is it there to help you? And you really need to sit with it and understand, what is this voice? Why do I have this voice? What is he or she trying to tell me? And so through that story, I laugh about it to this day. My mom tells people about it still to this day because it's so true. Most oftentimes, as we're kids growing into adults, we don't necessarily really understand what that driving force inside of us is. What is that guide? Why do we have that voice? And I'm here to tell you that sometimes you need to either turn your voice up, or you also sometimes need to turn your voice down. So I believe that there's an inner critic, and there's also the inner voice and the inner intuition. So inner critic is loud, right? We all have those thoughts. We all have those types of things. So I want to kind of address that, like, we have an inner critic, and most oftentimes it's pretty negative. It is pretty negative, and it's one of those things that you need to silence. Most oftentimes, it's okay to silence the inner critic, but do not silence your intuition. because I think everybody has probably heard this from their own mother. Your intuition is always right. Your gut instincts are always right. Now, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but there's been time and time again in my life where I said, maybe I shouldn't go to that party, or maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should stick back sometime. And if I didn't listen to it, something's happened. I've actually had two really crazy situations when I had a gut instinct to not go somewhere. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I have three very, very powerful ones. And we can maybe discuss those in a further episode, but I just want you to understand that when you have that instinct that says, hey, do not do that, or hey, I'm really trying to protect you from something, and it's something that I feel like comes up. So sometimes you can feel your intuition just like right here in the midsection. Sometimes you can feel it in your throat. Sometimes you can even feel it in your back. It's one of those things that's uniquely yours. And you have to sit with it, and you have to understand, why is that inner voice loud, not loud enough, or maybe sometimes it's being protective, right? And it's okay to have a protective inner voice, but you also have to remind yourself that a power shift and things in your life are only going to happen when you decide to say, I'm listening to the intuition, and it could feel scary and it could feel different and it's a new opportunity. Go for it. As long as the inner voice isn't saying to you, like, do not do that, it's not safe, right? It's like, don't jump off the cliff, or, don't go into millions of dollars of debt when you don't really even know what you're going to be doing, right? So there's so many times that in your life you can truly listen to that inner voice and have it kind of be your guide. So I'm here to tell you that if you haven't necessarily had a time in your life where you needed to turn up the volume to your inner voice, I encourage you to think back, like, is there times in your life where you probably think the intuition or the gut feeling was right? And think about that for a second, because it's very powerful to kind of think back into your past, or into when you were a child, or into certain situations before you maybe truly decided, my intuition and my gut instinct is most oftentimes, or I will honestly agree to disagree with you if you don't think that it's 99.99999% right. And I want you to think about that, because I'm here to say that maybe not everything is 100%. But if you can think to your life and think about the experiences that you have gone through, and the things that have maybe been a challenge, and the setbacks and the failures, like we always are talking about, was there a time in your life where if you would have turned up your inner voice or listened to it a little bit more intently, would things have changed for you? And think about that, because oftentimes we don't really know, right? We can't predict the future and we don't know what's going to happen. But most times, or all the time for me, in my experience, my gut instinct, or that first initial pull, is right. So, a couple little tips on how to turn her or him or anything up, or to start listening to it and be guided by it, is just truly sitting in the silence for a second. I always say you have to step back a second. You can't always, if somebody asks you a question, don't always just have the answer right away. Don't do it, because your inner voice is going to be your navigator. Your inner voice is going to be the one thing that you can say to yourself, does this feel good? Does it feel aligned? Is it authentic to me? Do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? Am I doing it because this other person needs it? Help with, like, really address your situation. Because in this world, we're all living in, like, how can I answer so quickly? How can I do more? How can I have this? How can I do here? What can I do more in my life? How can I make more money? How can I do this? How can I do this? And if we really truly were to take a few steps back in every single conversation that we have, and really truly listen to that first instinct, because most oftentimes you're you get asked a question, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe as you as the audience is listening, you're kind of shaking your head or nodding. You have one voice that's like, yep, I'll do that. And then in the back of your mind, as soon as you say, yep, I'll do that, you're like, damn it, why did I say I would do that? I don't have the time for that, or it's not, it doesn't feel good to me, or it doesn't align, right? And we're so programmed to quickly answer our questions, or quickly say yes, or quickly say no, when in all reality, if we could just pull ourselves out of situations and sit in silence. And I'm not talking that you have to sit in silence for 30 seconds and make the other person feel extremely awkward as they asked you the question, but you need to authentically step back and say, is this something I want to do? Does this align with my morals, my values, my desires? And ask yourself those questions. Because truly, it comes to a point where you automatically have a response. And most oftentimes your response is, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that. Oh, I'll bend over backwards this way. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. And then you come back at it and you're like, why did I say yes to these things when they don't serve you, or they don't align with what you're doing in your life? So I hope this is making sense, because this is very, very simple, but yet it takes a little bit of practice. It takes some practice. And like I said, it's not that you have to pull back and count to 30 and do it like one Mississippi, like Ross and Friends, where it takes way too long, right? Anybody reference that, one Mississippi, two Mississippi, and he's like just super black, right? Or tan. And so I want you to think about that. Step yourself back from a conversation. Anytime that you are in a conversation, or you are in a situation, or you're having something happen to you in your life, take 3 seconds to pause, reflect, and listen. Pause, reflect, and listen. Because if you can pause, you're going to reflect on what else is happening in your life, right? And then you're going to know what to do. Because if you don't, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose your mind, really, truly. Because if you don't think about it, and you don't pause, reflect, and then answer the question, or you then decide, you're going to be lost. And you're going to be like, God dang it, I shouldn't have said yes. And then guess what happens? Then you're going to have to try to figure out how to then tell that person, you know what, never mind. And that's almost like canceling on the plan, or canceling on that. So instead, I had a coaching client that I talked with this, and she was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Because we're constantly trying to, in a conversation, just kind of like quickly respond, right? Sometimes you're almost like finishing that person's sentence before they're even completely done with what they're saying. And before you can pause and then reflect and then answer the question, you've already answered the question, maybe not exactly how you really wanted to answer the question. So I hope you still don't have your eyes closed, because I reminded myself that like we were kind of going into that story, but I'm assuming you have your eyes open now and you're kind of back in with me here. But I really want you to think about that. As a time in your life, when have you not done the pause, reflect, and then answer? When have you not done that? And I'm here to tell you that you probably cannot count it on your fingers and your toes, and then adding in your arms and your legs, because truly we are in a society now where it's just a quick answer. Now, if you have learned this and you've already had the shift and you're like, okay, I actually do think through my decisions, I do think through my answers, I want to give you kudos. And I want you to share that with somebody after this episode and say, hey, take a second to reflect, take a second to pause, and take a second to answer your questions, so that you know that they're genuinely aligned and authentic to what you want in your life. Okay? And it's that simple. It's that simple as to understand, to listen, reflect, And understand, because remember, we just talked about like you're going to have one voice that says automatically yes, or you could say one that says automatically no, and then you kind of can think about it, step yourself back and think, is that truly what makes me feel good? Is it going to give me some sort of excitement to do this, or am I going to automatically regret it? Because when you automatically regret it, guess what happens? You're kind of upset and you're kind of like, gosh dang it. And you really have to kind of like try to figure out, how do you back out of it? Or how do you change your mind? So let's just do a little quick recap around what we're kind of talking about and how to really truly go inward and listen to your inner voice, or learn how to turn the inner voice up so that you can start making decisions in your life that are authentic to you and make you feel like you are in your power and you are making your power shifts and you are living aligned with what it is that you want. So remind yourself, as my 8-year-old self, understanding that there was a voice inside of me that I heard, but at that point in my life, I had to tell my mom, I don't think mine is loud enough. And I gave my mom a laugh, and I gave my mom the things that, as a mom, you just don't really even know how to respond, right? But at that point in my life it was a pivotal shift for me to say, like, oh my gosh, there really truly is a voice inside of us that is so powerful, and we need to learn how to listen to it. Pause, reflect, then answer. Because if you are here on this earth, you have probably answered something or done something without sitting and listening to that beautiful, pretty quiet, dim voice, but has a massive impact in your life and your decisions. So I hope this was helpful, and I hope this was something that you can take and understand, that even if you are 45 or 50 years old, or you are just now turning 20, however old you are and you are listening to this episode, you have a moment to reflect for yourself on, when was the first time you heard the inner voice? When was the first time that you quieted the inner voice? And then when was that time in your life where you decided, my inner voice is my higher self. My inner voice is there to direct me into the life that I know I am supposed to be living. Happy, fulfilled, passionate, driven, all the things, right? So I want you to think about that. Reflect on this episode and understand, when was that time for you? How old were you? And maybe even message me through Instagram or somewhere on social media and say, like, the age that this happened to me was this. Because I'm here to tell you that when you share your stories, it's crazy how relatable each and every one of our stories are, and how crazy our lives really are very much similar. We just are different journeys and different paths, and our times are different. I was 8, maybe 9 or 10, but it doesn't matter. It's when you decide to start making the shifts in your head and start living authentically aligned and go after the dreams and the desires that you have. Because they're there for a reason. So I hope you gained some knowledge out of this episode, and you can sit and say to yourself that you know that that inner voice is there to guide you. It is there to protect you as well, but you have to remind yourself that if you don't try to get out of that comfort zone and it feels like it's aligned with you, take the chance. Make the power shift and go after it. So thank you for joining this episode. I can't wait to see you on the next one. Super, super excited. And your friendly reminder to end this episode is, you are worthy, you are deserving, and you are more than enough to live the life that you truly love and you truly desire, unapologetically and authentically to you. Have a great one, and I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to The Power Shift. I hope today's episode inspired you to see setbacks as stepping stones and embrace the beauty in the chaos. Real growth happens when we align with our true selves and live unapologetically. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps more incredible people like you discover the show. Until next time, keep making those power shifts and step boldly into the life that's authentically yours.